I was holding our wedding invitation, staring at the date printed in elegant gold script, June 15th. In just 2 weeks, I would become Mrs. Tyler Henderson. After 3 years together, we were finally taking the next step. My heart felt so full of joy and hope. But there was something odd happening lately with Madison, my 24-year-old stepsister. She had always been the golden child of our family, the princess everyone adored. Recently, though, she seemed different around Tyler and me, more interested in our conversations, asking strange questions about our relationship. I brushed off the weird feeling creeping into my chest. Before I share what became the most devastating day of my entire life, let me know what city you are watching from in the comments below. Please hit that like button if you have ever trusted someone completely with your whole heart, because this story will show you exactly why sometimes the people closest to us can cause the deepest pain imaginable. Let me take you back to when this whole nightmare began. My dad remarried when I was 16 years old, bringing Patricia and her daughter Madison into our lives. Madison was only 12 then, but she was absolutely gorgeous, incredibly smart, and had this natural charm that made everyone fall in love with her instantly. While I always had to work hard for good grades and struggle to get attention, everything just came so easily to Madison. She was like sunshine in human form. Patricia made it clear from day one that Madison was her precious baby girl. Whenever Madison wanted something, she got it without question. I remember when Madison needed a dress for her junior prom, Patricia immediately took her shopping and bought her a $1,500 gown without blinking an eye. When my senior prom came around the following year, I had to work extra shifts at the local coffee shop just to afford a dress from the clearance rack. My dad tried his best to balance things, but Patricia had this way of making him feel guilty whenever he spent money on me instead of Madison. I learned to become independent early. I worked throughout high school, saved money for college, and basically raised myself while Madison got everything handed to her on a silver platter. Do not get me wrong, I never hated Madison for it. She was actually sweet to me most of the time, and I accepted my role as the older sister who just had to work harder for everything. That was just how our family worked, and I made peace with it. 3 years ago, everything changed when I met Tyler at the law firm where I worked as a junior associate. He was a paralegal there, incredibly talented and ambitious. Tyler had this warm personality, an amazing sense of humor that could make me laugh even on my worst days. We started as colleagues, then became friends who would grab coffee together, and slowly that friendship blossomed into something beautiful and real. Tyler was 27 when we met, and he had these big dreams of going to law school eventually. He worked so hard at everything he did, and I admired his determination. Our first official date was at this tiny Italian restaurant downtown, and we talked for hours about our hopes, dreams, and fears. I had never connected with anyone the way I connected with Tyler. He made me feel like I was worth something special, like I deserved love and attention just for being me. As our relationship grew stronger, Tyler became a regular fixture at family dinners and holiday gatherings. Everyone in my family absolutely loved him. My dad appreciated Tyler's work ethic and goals, while Patricia thought he was charming and handsome. But Madison seemed especially fascinated by Tyler. She would ask me dozens of questions about him constantly. What did he like to eat? What movies did he watch? What were his hobbies? At first, I thought it was sweet that my little sister was taking such an interest in my happiness. When Tyler proposed to me last December at our favorite restaurant, I felt like my entire world had finally fallen into place. He got down on one knee, right there beside our usual table, and I cried happy tears as he slipped the most beautiful diamond ring onto my finger. For once in my life, I had something that was completely and totally mine. Someone who chose me first, who loved me best, who saw me as their number one priority. Planning our June wedding became my favorite hobby. We booked the most gorgeous venue, a historic mansion with beautiful gardens. I found the perfect dress, a flowing white gown that made me feel like a princess. We spent weeks choosing the menu, selecting flowers, and creating our guest list of 200 friends and family members. Everything was falling into place perfectly. Madison volunteered to help with tons of wedding preparations, which made my heart so warm. Finally, my stepsister was showing genuine interest in my life and happiness. She helped me address invitations, choose centerpieces, and even came dress shopping with me. I thought maybe our relationship was finally evolving into something closer and more meaningful. Maybe Madison was growing up and realizing that family meant more than just competing for attention. But looking back now, I realize Madison was not helping out of love. She was gathering intelligence. About 2 weeks before the wedding, I started noticing small changes in Tyler's behavior that made my stomach twist with worry. He became distracted during our conversations, always checking his phone and saying he had to work late more often than usual. Sometimes when we were watching movies together, he would get text messages and smile in this secretive way before quickly putting his phone face down on the coffee table. Madison also started acting differently around the same time. She would disappear most evenings, claiming she was going to study groups or meeting friends for dinner. When I asked her about her plans, she would give vague answers and change the subject quickly. One Tuesday night when I came home early from work, I heard laughter coming from Madison's bedroom. It sounded like there was someone else in there with her, but when I knocked on her door, it took her almost 5 minutes to answer. When Madison finally opened the door, her face was flushed red, and she seemed nervous. Her hair looked messy, like she had been lying down, and she was wearing a different outfit than what she had on that morning. I asked if everything was okay, and she said she was just video chatting with friends from school. Something about her explanation did not sit right with me, but I decided not to push the issue because I did not want to seem like an overprotective older sister. Tyler started becoming more distant physically, too. He used to be so affectionate, always holding my hand, giving me random kisses and pulling me close when we watched television together. But during those final weeks before our wedding, he barely touched me at all. When I tried to initiate intimacy, he would say he was too stressed about work or too tired from long days at the office. He started sleeping on his side of the bed as far away from me as possible. I began questioning everything about myself. Was I being too clingy? Was I putting too much pressure on him about the wedding? Maybe all grooms got nervous before their big day and needed space to process their feelings. I tried to convince myself that Tyler's behavior was completely normal and that I was just being overly sensitive because I was stressed about wedding preparations. The Saturday before our wedding, I decided to surprise Tyler with a special dinner at our apartment. I left work early, stopped by the grocery store, and bought ingredients to make his favorite meal, grilled salmon with garlic mashed potatoes. I wanted to remind him why we fell in love and help him relax before our big week ahead. I felt excited as I drove to his office building, planning to pick him up and bring him home for our romantic evening together. When I arrived at Tyler's office building at 7 o'clock, the security guard told me that Tyler had left around 5 o'clock that afternoon. I felt confused because Tyler had specifically told me that morning he would be working until at least 8 o'clock on a very important case. I called his cell phone, and he answered after several rings, speaking in a hushed voice. He said he was in the middle of a crucial client meeting that could not be interrupted. But in the background of our phone call, I heard soft jazz music playing the kind they play at restaurants and bars. It definitely did not sound like any law office conference room I had ever been in. When I pointed this out, Tyler quickly said the meeting was at a restaurant because the client preferred a more casual atmosphere for discussing sensitive legal matters. His explanation sounded reasonable enough, so I drove home to wait for him. I sat in our living room until 11 o'clock that night, keeping the dinner warm in the oven and trying to stay positive. When Tyler finally came home, he looked tired and stressed. He thanked me for making dinner, but said he was too exhausted to eat much. Around the same time, I heard the front door open downstairs as Madison returned home. She called out that she was back from her study group, which seemed to run pretty late for a Tuesday night. The next morning, I remembered that Madison did not have any classes on Tuesday evenings that would require study groups. Her schedule was printed on the refrigerator, and Tuesdays were completely free. That small detail stuck in my mind like a splinter, making me feel uneasy every time I thought about it. Something was definitely not adding up, but I could not figure out what exactly was wrong. Thursday of that week, I made a decision that would change everything. I left my office at 4:30 in the afternoon and drove home, parking my car down the street where I could see our house without being noticed. I felt ridiculous for spying on my own family, but my instincts were screaming that something terrible was happening right under my nose. At 6:30, Tyler's silver Honda pulled into our driveway. I watched through my windshield as Madison came running out of the house wearing a flowing sundress I had never seen before. She jumped into Tyler's passenger seat, and before they drove away, I saw them kiss passionately. Not a friendly peck on the cheek, but a deep romantic kiss between two people who were clearly in love with each other. I sat frozen in my car for 20 minutes, unable to move or think clearly. My brain could not process what my eyes had just witnessed. This had to be some kind of mistake. Maybe Tyler was just comforting Madison about something and I misunderstood what I saw, but deep in my heart I knew exactly what that kiss meant, and it made me feel sick to my stomach. I followed them to a small restaurant on the outskirts of town, staying far enough behind so they would not notice my car. Through the restaurant windows, I watched Tyler and Madison hold hands across their table, touch each other's faces tenderly, and gaze into each other's eyes like lovers do. Tyler stroked Madison's cheek the same way he used to touch my face when we first started dating. The intimacy between them was obvious and devastating. With shaking hands, I took several photos on my phone as evidence of what I was seeing. Then I drove home as fast as I could, arriving before they returned from their romantic dinner date. I pretended to be asleep when Tyler came to bed after midnight, but I laid awake all night staring at the ceiling and trying to figure out what to do with this horrible information. The night before our wedding, I decided I could not go through with the ceremony without confronting the truth first. Tyler was out at his bachelor party with his friends, so I knew I would have privacy to talk with Madison about what I had discovered. I waited until Patricia and my dad went to bed, then knocked softly on Madison's bedroom door, carrying the photos I had taken as evidence. Madison was sitting at her vanity table, brushing her long blonde hair and humming quietly to herself. She looked so young and innocent in her pink silk pajamas, and for a moment I almost could not believe she was capable of betraying me so completely. When I showed her the photos on my phone, her face went completely pale and her hands started trembling. At first, Madison tried to deny everything, claiming the photos were taken out of context or that I was misunderstanding an innocent situation. But when I pressed her for details about where she had been Tuesday night, her story started falling apart quickly. Finally, she broke down crying and admitted that she had been having an affair with Tyler for the past 6 months. Through her tears, Madison told me that she had fallen in love with Tyler the very first time she met him 3 years ago. She said she tried to ignore her feelings because she knew he was with me, but the attraction was too strong for both of them to resist. According to Madison, Tyler had also developed feelings for her over time, and they had been fighting their connection until they finally gave in to temptation earlier this year. "Elena, I am so sorry, but I love him." Madison sobbed, mascara running down her cheeks. "And he loves me too. We tried to stop ourselves, but love cannot be controlled or forced. Tyler chose me not because he wanted to hurt you, but because what we have together is real and powerful and undeniable." Just as Madison finished her confession, I heard the front door opened downstairs. Patricia and my dad had heard our voices and came to see what was happening. Patricia immediately rushed to comfort Madison, wrapping her arms around her daughter and shooting angry looks in my direction, as if somehow this whole situation was my fault for upsetting her precious baby girl. "Love is natural, Elena," Patricia said firmly. "No one can control who they fall in love with. Madison and Tyler did not plan for this to happen. Sometimes these things just occur, and we have to accept them gracefully instead of creating drama and conflict." My dad stood in the doorway looking absolutely stunned and heartbroken. He kept running his hands through his hair and asking how this could have happened under our roof without anyone noticing. I could see the guilt in his eyes, knowing that he had failed to protect me from this betrayal happening in our own family. I immediately called Tyler and demanded that he come to the house right away. When he arrived 30 minutes later, still smelling like beer from his bachelor party, I confronted him with everything Madison had told me. Tyler looked defeated and ashamed, but he did not try to deny the affair or make excuses for his behavior. "Elena, I am deeply sorry for hurting you this way." Tyler said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But Madison is telling the truth. I do love her, and I have been struggling with these feelings for months. I tried to fight them because I knew it would destroy you, but I cannot marry someone when I am in love with someone else. That would not be fair to any of us." Tyler explained that he had been planning to call off the wedding for weeks, but could not find the courage to break my heart. He said the guilt was eating him alive, and he knew he had to be honest before we made a terrible mistake by getting married when his heart belonged to someone else. In his mind, he was actually being noble by stopping the wedding before it was too late. I felt like my entire world was crashing down around me. In less than 12 hours, 200 guests would be arriving at the church expecting to witness my fairy tale wedding. My dress was hanging in the closet, the flowers were ordered, the cake was decorated, and the honeymoon was booked. Everything was perfect except for the fact that my groom was in love with my stepsister. Patricia suggested that we postpone the wedding to give everyone time to process their emotions and figure out the best way to handle this complicated situation. She spoke as if this was just a minor bump in the road that could be worked out with a little patience and understanding. She seemed to think that eventually I would come around and accept that Madison and Tyler belonged together. But I knew there was no coming back from this betrayal. I barely slept that night, alternating between crying and staring at the ceiling while trying to figure out how to handle the most humiliating day of my life. At 7 o'clock Saturday morning, I got up to take a shower and prepare myself for the horrible task of canceling my wedding. When I went downstairs to make coffee, I discovered that Madison had packed up all of her belongings and disappeared from the house. On the kitchen counter, I found a handwritten note from Madison. "Elena, Tyler, and I have decided to leave town together so we can start fresh somewhere new. I know you hate me right now, and I understand why. But I hope someday you will forgive me and realize that I never meant for any of this to hurt you. I love Tyler with all my heart, and I believe we are meant to be together. I hope you can find happiness too." I called Tyler immediately, but his phone number was no longer in service. When I drove to his apartment, I found it completely empty. Tyler had packed up his entire life and disappeared with Madison in the middle of the night, just hours before our wedding ceremony was scheduled to begin. At 9 o'clock, guests started arriving at the church, dressed in their finest clothes and carrying wedding gifts. I had to stand at the altar and announce to 200 people that there would be no wedding because my fiancé had run away with my stepsister. The shame and embarrassment I felt in that moment was unlike anything I had ever experienced in my entire life. Some guests were supportive and understanding, offering hugs and words of comfort. Others seemed shocked and confused, whispering among themselves about how something like this could happen. A few people actually seemed entertained by the drama, treating my devastation like it was some kind of soap opera storyline for their amusement. Patricia stood by her decision to support Madison, telling anyone who would listen that her daughter was just following her heart and that true love could not be denied. She said she would never turn her back on Madison no matter what anyone else thought about the situation. Patricia made it clear that she expected our family to eventually welcome Madison and Tyler back with open arms when they were ready to return. That day, I realized that I was completely alone in my own family. No one was standing up for me or defending my right to feel betrayed and heartbroken. Everyone seemed more concerned with making excuses for Madison and Tyler than acknowledging the pain they had caused me. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of people who should have loved and protected me but chose not to. The first 3 months after my non-wedding were the darkest period of my entire life. I took temporary leave from my job because I could not concentrate on anything legal related without breaking down crying. I barely ate, rarely showered, and spent most days in my pajamas watching mindless television shows while trying to forget about the life I had planned with Tyler. My best friend from college, Sarah, flew in from Chicago to stay with me during those awful first weeks. She helped me return all the wedding gifts, cancel the honeymoon reservations, and deal with all the practical matters I was too depressed to handle myself. Sarah also encouraged me to start seeing a therapist, which turned out to be one of the best decisions I ever made. Dr. Martinez helped me understand that Madison and Tyler's betrayal said nothing about my worth as a person and everything about their character and moral failings. Through therapy, I learned to stop blaming myself for not being enough to keep Tyler faithful. I also began to recognize the toxic family dynamics that had shaped my entire childhood and young adulthood. After 6 months of healing work, I made the difficult decision to move out of my family home and into my own apartment across town. I needed physical distance from Patricia's constant defense of Madison's actions and my dad's uncomfortable attempts to pretend everything would eventually return to normal. Living independently felt scary at first, but it also felt incredibly freeing. I threw myself into rediscovering who I was as an individual person, separate from my role as the family scapegoat and Madison's less favored older sister. I started taking painting classes at the community center and discovered that I had actual artistic talent that no one in my family had ever noticed or encouraged. I also began practicing yoga, which helped me find inner peace and physical strength I never knew I possessed. When I returned to work after my leave, my boss was amazingly supportive and understanding about everything I had been through. Instead of treating me like damaged goods, she actually promoted me to senior associate and gave me more challenging cases to work on. For the first time in my career, I felt truly valued and respected for my professional abilities. About 18 months after Tyler and Madison ran away together, I met David at a work conference in Denver. He was an architect presenting on sustainable building design, and I was immediately drawn to his passion for his work and his gentle, honest personality. David was nothing like Tyler in the best possible ways. He was reliable, straightforward, and genuinely interested in getting to know me as a person. David and I took our relationship very slowly, partly because I was still healing from my previous betrayal, and partly because we both wanted to build something solid and lasting. He never pressured me to move faster than I was comfortable with, and he showed incredible patience with my occasional moments of insecurity and fear. After dating for 8 months, David moved in with me, and we began building a life together based on mutual respect and genuine love. 2 years and 3 months after the worst day of my life, my phone rang, while David and I were making Sunday morning breakfast together. The caller ID showed Patricia's name, which surprised me because we had not spoken in over 6 months. When I answered, Patricia's voice sounded strained and urgent. "Elena Madison is back home and she needs our family's help," Patricia said without any greeting or small talk. "Tyler left her for another woman when they were living in Seattle. Madison is 7 months pregnant and has nowhere else to go. She made a terrible mistake and she knows it. Now she needs her family to forgive her and help her get back on her feet." I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me as Patricia spoke. 2 years ago, this phone call would have sent me into an emotional tailspin, but now I felt nothing but mild curiosity about what had happened to the people who had once caused me so much pain. I was not angry anymore, but I was also not particularly interested in getting involved in Madison's latest crisis. Patricia went on to explain that Madison had been calling and crying, begging to speak with me directly. According to Patricia, Madison wanted to apologize properly and ask for my forgiveness so that she could move back into our family home while she prepared for the baby's arrival. Patricia clearly expected me to welcome Madison back with open arms and pretend that the past 2 years had never happened. "She is family, Elena," Patricia said firmly. "Family forgives each other and sticks together through difficult times. Madison needs us now more than ever, and it would be cruel to turn our backs on her when she is pregnant and alone." Later that same day, Madison called me directly. Her voice sounded different, smaller somehow, without the confident charm she had always possessed. She cried as she apologized for betraying me and ruining my wedding day. She told me that Tyler had revealed his true character during their time together, becoming controlling and eventually cheating on her with a 21-year-old waitress he met at work. "Elena, I was so wrong about everything," Madison sobbed into the phone. "Tyler was not the man I thought he was. He told me that I was just a temporary distraction and that you were the one he should have married because you were more stable and mature. He said he never loved me the way he loved you and that I was just a silly mistake." Madison explained that Tyler had abandoned her in Seattle when she refused to get an abortion, leaving her with no money, no job, and no way to support herself or the baby she was carrying. She had been staying at a women's shelter for the past month, trying to figure out what to do next. She begged me to let her come home and promised that she had learned her lesson about the consequences of selfish actions. I listened to Madison's story with a mixture of sympathy and emotional detachment. I felt sorry for her situation, especially knowing she was pregnant and struggling financially. But I also recognized that Madison was once again expecting other people to rescue her from the consequences of her own choices. She wanted forgiveness and support without having to truly face the magnitude of what she had done to our family. 3 days later, I agreed to meet Madison at a quiet coffee shop downtown. It was the first time I had seen her in over 2 years, and the change in her appearance was dramatic. Gone was the glowing, confident young woman who had stolen my fiancé. Instead, Madison looked exhausted, swollen from pregnancy, and genuinely frightened about her future. Madison spent an hour telling me about her difficult time with Tyler, describing how he had gradually become emotionally abusive and controlling. She said he constantly compared her to me, telling her that she was too immature and irresponsible to be a good wife or mother. Tyler had isolated Madison from any friends she made in Seattle and prevented her from getting a job or building any kind of independent life. "Tyler told me that you were the one who got away and that he realized what a mistake he had made by leaving you," Madison said, tears streaming down her face. "He said that stealing your fiancé was probably the most immature thing I had ever done, and that I would never be half the woman you are." As Madison spoke, I realized that Tyler had been playing both of us from the very beginning. He had never truly loved either Madison or me. Instead, he had used our insecurities and family dynamics to manipulate us both for his own selfish purposes. Madison had been just as much a victim of Tyler's lies as I had been, even though her actions had still caused tremendous pain, but understanding Madison's situation did not automatically make me responsible for fixing it. "Madison, I do forgive you for what happened," I said, calmly reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. "And I am genuinely sorry that Tyler treated you so badly. No one deserves to be abandoned and abused, especially when they are pregnant. But forgiving you does not mean that I am obligated to rescue you or pretend that what happened between us did not matter." I explained to Madison that I had spent 2 years learning how to value myself and set healthy boundaries with people who had hurt me. I told her that while I wished her well and hoped she would find a way to build a good life for herself and her baby, I was not willing to be her safety net anymore. "You need to learn how to save yourself, Madison," I said gently but firmly. I spent too many years of my life trying to save other people who did not appreciate or respect my efforts. I cannot go back to being that person, even for family. I offered to help Madison research resources for single mothers, including job training programs and affordable housing options, but I made it clear that I would not be providing financial support or allowing her to move in with David and me. I also explained that I would not be returning to our family home to play happy family while everyone pretended that Madison's betrayal had not happened. "I forgive you, Madison, but forgiveness does not mean forgetting," I said as our conversation came to an end. "It means that I am not carrying anger about the past anymore, but it does not erase the consequences of what happened or change the boundaries I need to maintain for my own well-being." Madison looked disappointed and hurt by my response, but she seemed to understand that I was not the same person she had betrayed 2 years earlier. I had grown stronger, wiser, and more self-aware during my time away from our toxic family dynamics. I was no longer willing to sacrifice my own happiness and peace of mind to keep other people comfortable. As I drove home from that coffee shop meeting, I felt proud of myself for handling the situation with grace and maturity. I had managed to extend compassion to Madison while still protecting myself from being manipulated or taken advantage of again. It felt like the final piece of my healing journey had fallen into place. 6 months later, David proposed to me during a weekend trip to Napa Valley. His proposal was simple, sincere, and perfectly suited to who we are as a couple. We are planning a small, intimate wedding next spring with just our closest friends and family members who have consistently supported our relationship. This time, I know with absolute certainty that my groom will be standing at the altar waiting for me. Today, I am happier and more fulfilled than I ever imagined possible. I have learned that sometimes the worst betrayals in our lives can actually become the greatest gifts if we use them as opportunities to grow and discover our own strength. Madison's betrayal forced me to examine my relationships, my family dynamics, and my own self-worth in ways that ultimately made me a healthier and more complete person. I rarely think about Tyler anymore except to feel grateful that I discovered his true character before I legally tied my life to his. Madison and I exchange Christmas cards each year, and I genuinely hope she is building a good life for herself and her daughter. But we will never be close sisters again, and I have made peace with that reality. The most important lesson I learned from this experience is that forgiveness and boundaries can coexist beautifully. I can forgive someone for hurting me while still protecting myself from being hurt by them again. I can have compassion for someone's struggles while refusing to be responsible for solving their problems. And I can love my family while choosing not to participate in toxic dynamics that diminish my self-worth. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do for ourselves and others is to say no to requests that would compromise our own well-being and happiness. Learning to prioritize my own needs and feelings was not selfish. It was essential for building the healthy, joyful life I have today with David. Have you ever had to choose between forgiving someone and protecting yourself from future harm? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, Please give it a like and subscribe for more real-life stories about overcoming betrayal and finding strength. Share this video with anyone who might need to hear that they deserve better than people who do not value their worth. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that your happiness and peace of mind are always worth protecting. I wish you all the love and healing you deserve in your own journeys.